We'll start the meeting in a few minutes to allow more participants to join.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the third and final day of the 12th IAEG-SDG meeting. We will jump right in, and our first agenda item will be to review data innovations initiatives for the SDGs, including 3 presentations, followed by a question and answer period. Our first presenters, Ms. Beryl Ahmed and Mr. Ibrahima Gay will present on the Data for Now initiative. So I will turn the floor to you. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Kara, for handing over. So my name is Faryal Ahmed, and I am from the United Nations Statistics Division, working in the Development Data and Outreach branch. I would start with just mentioning that my co-presenter, Ibrahima, wouldn't be able to join due to some unforeseen circumstances, so I will be covering for him. I'm very pleased to share the Data for Now initiative here with all of you. So the Data for Now initiative was launched in 2013 by four core partners, which are the United Nations Statistics Division, the World Bank, the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development Data, and the Sustainable Development Solution Network. So I'm just going to slides. Yeah, next slide, please. So the Data for Now model keeps the countries at the forefront of the initiative. The aim of the project is to increase the availability and use of more accurate, disaggregated, and up-to-date data. And it aims to increase the uptake and use of proven solutions to provide timely insights for decision makers and ultimately accelerating progress on the SDGs. So we start by mapping the gaps in needs, and that is something that the core partners have been focused on since its inception, is to identify what are the data gaps and needs for various statistics offices, and then identifying the resources and support, that is, what are the funding resources available that can be provided to fill those data gaps, and then identifying data solution, and this is to increase the various options in terms of the sources, methods, and technologies that could be used to fill those gaps. Once those are identified, you broker the partnership with various partners in academia, in civil society, across the international agencies to help national statistics offices to fill those data gaps that they have identified in the priority process. And then we prepare for the support, and then in the next phase, we support the use of data for sustainable development by implementing those sources, methods, and technologies. And once those are established, we share the solution and share the lessons with other countries as well in the process. Thank you. Next slide. The Data for Now initiative is guided by the following principles. As I mentioned, that the Data for Now project keeps the country's priorities at the forefront. So the national statistics offices are at the core of prioritizing the needs and implementing the activities. And they're also a kind of entry point for us to work with the entire national statistics system to fill the data gaps that have been identified in the prioritization process. The work approach principles are openness and inclusiveness, that anybody is open, any country is open to join the Data for Now initiatives. The Data for Now initiative welcome partners to join. So we have the 4 core partners, and in addition, we have other partners who are providing their technical expertise in terms of trainings or workshops or other advisory consultancies that are provided. Then there's the knowledge sharing and transparency, that we share the information or the solutions through various platforms with various countries, and commitment to provide resources. It's either through the funding, financial, or advisory resources. And user-centric approach is that the Data for Now project is focused on providing the data and the data that meets the requirements of the users, that are the decision makers or civil society or anybody who's able to use the data to accelerate the progress on SDGs. And then we have the data principles, which is the holistic perspective. We're considering various angles in terms of understanding the data needs. And then we focus on the production-ready solutions. That is, look at the technologies, methods that have been used in the past, and then either take them to scale or customize them to the needs of the various countries' data gaps. And then one of the data principle is to ensure data quality in all of its practices, as well as the protection of privacy and confidentiality. All of this boils down to the outcome-oriented principles, which is increasing the capacity of the countries to sustain these introduced sources, methods, and technologies in countries. And also in this process, we respond to the needs of the countries and adjust according to what is prioritized by the country. And the ultimate outcome is measure of outcome for us is how well or to what extent are the needs of the data users being met in the process. So that is a bit on the Data for Now project. I'll now move on to the next slide, where we'll be talking about the Data for Now initiative in Senegal. So this is one of the countries which is funded by the Italian project. This is one of the two countries currently that we have in the Italian project, including Colombia. So we have been working very closely with the ANSD, which is the National Statistics Office in Senegal, to identify and actively implement activities to fill those data gaps. So since the inception workshop in 2019, ANSD prioritized 5 themes under which they had identified various data gaps. So these 5 themes are the SDG 2, which is on zero hunger, SDG 11, 13, 15, as well as the COVID-19 thematic area, where they had identified to identify various data sources which can measure the impact of COVID-19. So once these 5 thematic areas were identified during the Kigali workshop, ANSD hosted various consultative workshops within Senegal to identify the gaps between these 5 thematic areas, as well as prioritize which of the indicators they would like to fill gaps for. So I would like to highlight that ANSD has 100 plus structures, or let's say the ministry's development and agencies within the NSS. So this process was very essential for the project to bring together various partners and agree on the priorities, as well as take on board the expertise within the various structures of the NSS. The next slide. So within each of the key priority themes that ANSD identified under SDG 2, ANSD and partners within the NSS, as well as other stakeholders, identified the prevalence of food insecurity, the prevalence of undernourishment, and the average income of small food producers as the key priorities for this theme. And during the workshop, the stakeholders identified what was missing, what is needed, what are the data sources available, and who are the partners who can potentially contribute to filling this gap. And in this process, where FAO was also one of the participants, we were able to broker a partnership with FAO, and in collaboration, we've been working with FAO to provide technical support to ANSD and stakeholders on these 3 key indicators. Similarly, under the SDG 11, we had a similar workshop, and under this workshop, we were able to broker a partnership with UN Habitat, where UN Habitat has agreed to provide technical support to ANSD and partners to estimate these indicators. So in terms of providing support, they will be conducting a workshop for technical participants to be able to have in-house capacity to be able to estimate these indicators. For SDG 13, the indicator that was identified was to determine the number of deaths, missing persons, and victims caused by disaster per 100,000 persons. So DPC, which is the main the stakeholder for estimating this indicator, ANSD, DPC are collaborating, and we are able to provide through a consultant technical support in order to identify what has been done so far and make recommendations on the kind of system that would be required to consolidate information on natural disasters in Senegal. So all of this has been very promising because the partnerships, I think the key thing in Senegal has been how the partners have come together to share their technical resources and implement and fill the data gaps. Next slide. Under SDG 15, we have the forest area as proportion of total land area, where variation in the extent of water-dependent ecosystems, and the proportion of maritime surface covered by protected areas. And under this theme, we have another project in the statistics division, which is called the SIA project, and we're collaborating with the SIA project and to provide training on the artificial intelligence tool, which is the ARIES tool, that will be used to estimate these indicators. The training is the training is being conducted from 8 to 12 November in Senegal by the SIA project team and ARIES team, and it is being supported by the ANSD and the Data for Now project focal person in Senegal as well. Last but not the least, we have the COVID-19 thematic area where we're supporting Senegal in collecting or data cataloging and profiling the various data sources from the NSS. This is a huge endeavor because in the process, the consultant that has hired under the project has identified a large number of data sources. So now with the stakeholders in ANSD, we're under the process to prioritize which of the data sets relevant to COVID-19 are the most relevant and useful for the users. And once that is prioritized, that data set would be available on a COVID-19 platform that is being set up with support from ANSD as well as UNSD technical staff. Next slide, please. One of the major the deliverables of under the project is the IT data architecture work. Under this work, we had hired under the project an IT consultant who was able to identify the gaps and the current analysis of the IT structure and provided recommendations on how to update the IT architecture in order to meet the needs of the NSD. And this has been a very eye-opening exercise for ANSD as well, because ANSD is on board to upgrade and update the IT data architecture, and we're currently working with ANSD's IT team as well as the external IT team to be able to provide a solution and build capacity within ANSD to update the system. So in terms of the current situation analysis, it was identified that the data sharing can be improved and digitized to avoid duplication. There are several manual steps to extract the data required, and this requires support from the information system. There was less time to work on statistical analysis, and there's lack of modern approach to secure data. And after the assessment and recommendations, now the target is to build a modern file analysis system for better sharing and access to data. That is the main kind of, let's say, the most essential part of the IT architecture. Then creating value by integrating external tools such as search engine, data value visualization, creating an open data platform, building a strong security control, and implementing a reference data management process. So all of this would be done through to expert consultants in collaboration and working closely with ANSD to be able to embed all of these expertise within ANSD to increase in-house capacity to sustain the IT architecture. Next slide. So as I mentioned, that one of the core things of the project is that we use whatever existing sources we have, tried and tested methods, and customize it to the needs of the countries. So in that process, we have closely worked with the Senegal's resident coordinator's office as well as the country team to identify what is already being done. and to also partner with the various country teams, the members of the country teams, to implement activities in ANSD. So for example, we have already partnered with FAO to support activities under SDG 2, and then we have partnered with UN Habitat to provide technical support on priority land use indicators. And UNSD is currently working with ANSD to explore the deployment of the small area estimation to disaggregate the food security indicators at a more granular level. And also we have here the ARES tool, through which we're able to provide technical support to ANSD through the SIA project. Next slide. Yes, so that is it, and there's much more resources that will be available very soon on our website, which would be providing more details on the progress of these activities. So stay tuned. Thank you so much, and over to you, Kara.
Thank you very much, Faral. It's very interesting, the initiative, and I really liked seeing a country example. And it's great that you're focusing on the country's needs and working with the NSO. I think that's really important. And absolutely acknowledging that technology is really key to making things happen. So the IT infrastructure needs to be there. So thank you very much for your presentation. We have Mr. Peter Koblowski from the International Civil Society Center, who is going to give us a presentation on data partnerships to leave no one behind, working with civil society and human rights data for a more inclusive monitoring and planning. So please, over to you, Peter.
Thanks a lot, Kara, and also thanks a lot to all the colleagues in the room and to the colleagues from the United Nations Statistics Division who have given me the opportunity to speak to you today on this important section on data innovations and initiatives for SDGs. So the title of this presentation is going to be Working with Civil Society and Human Rights Data for More Inclusive Monitoring and Planning. And actually, I'm here representing two initiatives. First of all, maybe I should say, I'm working for the International Civil Society Center, which is a hub for international NGOs. So our members are the big names from the NGO community. You know them: World Vision, Amnesty International, WWF, Plan International, and so on. And in that function, I'm also acting as the global coordinator of the Leave No One Behind partnership, which is hosted by the center. Some of the members in this partnership you see here on this slide. But I'm also referring to our joint work with Partners for Review and the Danish Institute for Human Rights, with whom we have launched the Inclusive SDG Data Partnerships Initiative. And yeah, in the next slides, I'm going to introduce you to the work of these two platforms. So next slide, please. Thanks. So what you see here is the Leave No One Behind partnership. Our ambition is to make the voices of marginalized groups heard and count. We are at the global level 13 members, mostly the INGO community, but also international think tanks like Development Initiatives and IASD are involved. And at the national level, we have more than 70 member organizations active in 7 countries, which you see here. This is Bangladesh, India, Kenya, Nepal, Vietnam. And since 2021, our newest 2 coalitions are in Malawi and in Denmark, the first northern country where we're active. What we're trying to do is to realize the Leave No One Behind agenda. For us, Leave No One Behind is a universal promise, a universal value of the SDGs. And this value and this promise is valid also in northern societies. Marginalized communities exist in all societies, and all countries have to work on this likewise. So we're not only active in the global south with this initiative. What are we doing? Next slide, please. I would like to explain this very briefly with the 3 E's: examine, engage, empower. First of all, we have a data focused approach, and our national coalitions, which consist of civil society organizations and community-based organizations and national SDG forums and national platforms for civil society, They go out and they identify marginalized groups at the municipality level, and they measure factors that contribute to their exclusion and vulnerability and reflect that against the SDG indicator system. We also have the column engage. We want to engage these groups directly in this process. So marginalized communities are actually trained in collecting this monitoring data through our experts at the national level and also with the support of our global level members. And we don't only train these communities, we also offer trainings for local authorities to work with civil society data. And recently in Kenya, for example, there has been a larger training with the staff of at ministry level, at the national level, on the use of gender inclusive data. So these trainings benefit both government and civil society. The last E is empower. We want to use this data to drive dialogues on policies and the improvement of services to better reflect the situation and to better reach marginalized groups in countries using this data-driven approach. Next slide, please. What does that mean now concretely? Making voices heard and count. What do we want to achieve? Through this approach, we want to achieve that country SDG priorities are inclusive of marginalized communities and that SDG strategies and policies are informed through community-driven data as a complementary source to official SDG monitoring. If you break that further down, this also means for us, we want to make sure that VNRs are informed by this community data. We want to make sure that there are common rules and guidelines on which civil society data can be created, and we want to make sure that this is recognized by the NSOs and by government. And as I said, making voices count, the most important part is after the recognition of this data, it also has to be used, and we want to see it used in the formulation of budgets, of public services, and of policies. And a key challenge for us as Civil Society Coalition has always been like, we are lobbyists. We come from civil society, and there has been little collaborations between civil society and especially national statistic offices in the past. And often the protagonists from civil society and the statistical community speak a very different language, and they use different methodologies and even objectives in terms of how and why they generate data. So in a result, sometimes there's not only a language barrier, but also sometimes a trust barrier that has to be come over and to agree on a common rule book on how to do this. And to do this rule book is one of our key ambitions, but we felt also over the years since our existence that we have to invest more into trust building between civil society and the key actors from government. So next slide, please. This leads me to the Inclusive SDG Data Partnerships Initiative that we have launched with Partners for Review and the Danish Institute for Human Rights. Very briefly, Partners for Review is a multi-country and multi-stakeholder platform that is hosted by the German Development Corporation, GIZ. And they bring stakeholders from, I think, 60, 70 countries together to improve national SDG monitoring and review. The Danish Institute for Human Rights is a national human rights institution, and they are a leading figure in terms of relating the human rights framework to the SDG framework, also on the data level. And they are advocating for the use of human rights data also in the SDG monitoring context. And together with these actors, we have set up this initiative where we really wanted to bring together what we consider to be 4 key players to form a national data partnership. This is, of course, the National Statistic Office, who is the data steward in a country, but this is also the National SDG Coordination Unit, so the ministry which has the lead on the National SDG strategy, because they are like the key potential users and multiplicators of alternative data sources in national SDG process. And then we wanted to bring together national human rights institutions. They produce human rights data. They produce periodical data, which also focuses on rights holder groups, marginalized groups. And of course, we wanted to bring in civil society, who also have a direct reach to marginalized groups. what did we want to do? We wanted to build trust between these actors, and we wanted to talk about how to create common rules for data production, for data production and use. And yeah, we wanted to let these actors reflect on what a national data partnership pilot could look like. Next slide, please. So since the pandemic hit us in 2020, we had to take a virtual approach for this. Actually, we wanted to do this through a series of conferences and meetings. But what we did was a 6-month online course where we really identified these stakeholders from 6 countries and brought them together into one virtual room. And we gave the countries space to talk about their priorities. We brought the different countries together into one room to exchange on experiences made with alternative data so far. And we got external supporters. UNSD was there, UNDP, DESA, the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development, Paris 21, and the Colombian statistics agency, who all have experience in using and alternative data. And so we provided expert advice for these stakeholders from these 4 countries. And the goal was that they design a pilot project using this advice. What came out of that? Next slide, please. In Canada, which was one of the countries, the national team has decided to explore partnerships to mobilize localized SDG data to support the SDG monitoring of Canadian cities. The first virtual workshop recently took place, I think in September, and it was attended by 50 participants representing Statistics Canada, the SDG unit, and various initiatives from civil society who are producing data. And they have developed a framework for mobilizing local SDG data for Canadian cities. And some of the next steps include that they want to produce guidance on developing measurable SDG objectives for cities, and that they develop indicators for the related SDG process. So there's ongoing work in Canada. Similar in Costa Rica, there's ongoing work as well. Their approach was to set up an SDG data platform, which is supposed to host alternative SDG data sources. And this initiative brought together also the SDG unit, the NSO, but various NGOs, also the business sectors, chambers, and groups of enterprises and academia. And they have already agreed on a monitoring tool, and they are currently developing a questionnaire for various SDGs. The goal is that this platform will go online on the website of the National SDG Unit, and that cross-sectoral stakeholders can contribute with their data to this platform. In Ghana, we have 2 ongoing discussions. One is that the National Human Rights Institution will play a larger role in national monitoring. So the Statistics Office and the NHRI are about to sign an MOU on contributing human rights data to national monitoring. And also an ongoing discussion is to improve monitoring of gender-related data on SDG 5 and beyond, where also civil society can contribute. This is an ongoing discussion in Ghana. Next slide, please. In Nepal, we have a wide range of civil society networks and government bodies who are engaged in this initiative that has been forming. Nepal already had a Leave No One Behind coalition in the country, and they are joined now by the NSO and the Planning Ministry to monitor on specific SDG indicators. You can see them on the slide. And what they want to do is to have a national conference on citizen-generated data and a dialogue on these SDG indicators that you can see there, to agree on concrete measures on how citizen-generated data can contribute to this. There will be training elements on citizen-generated data, and involving also the application of a community scorecard model. And we are in touch with UNSD to produce a guideline on the use of citizen-generated data in Nepal, focusing on the outcomes of this project. The Philippines has agreed on a cross-sector specific monitoring on SDGs 16.10.1 and 16.10.2. This is about suppressing journalists and associated media personnel, trade unionists, and human rights advocates. So what has happened there is that an MOU has been signed between the National Statistic Unit and the National Human Rights Institution on the collection of respective monitoring data. And the National Human Rights Institution will act as a key commissioner for bringing in civil society data and data of right holder groups. And this will be also assisted by the OHCHR, including suggestions for operational guidelines, validation workshops, and other indicator-related work. Lastly, we had Palestine, and they are developing a handbook for data sources to collect, process, and disseminate administrative data from organizations for statistical purposes. And this partnership is hosted by the NSO, and it involves, among others, the National Human Rights Commission and various NGOs as contributors of alternative administrative data for national SDG monitoring. And it's actually joined by 28 different government agencies who are involved in this collaboration, including the Prime Minister's Office. And they have established a system where, which is indicator-based. So partners are identified to bring in alternative data on specific indicators. And by the end of this year, the partnership aims to have a clear vision on what alternative data is available for each indicator in the country. And this is also supported by UNSD in terms of global reporting. And I think they're also a custodian on some of the indicators. Yeah, these are the ongoing projects in these 6 countries. And next slide, please. I think I'm running over time. I just wanted to share some of the key insights and learnings. We have seen that leave no one behind is a common driver across the sectors and across all actors to really drive such an SDG data partnership. Most actors involved in our course, which were over 60, have really appreciated the leave no one behind agenda as a common glue for setting up such a partnership. And it was also helpful to have a neutral facilitation through Partners for Review, the Danish Institute, and the International Civil Society Center. And we have learned that it is very important that capacity building is offered in the ongoing work, because capacities are missing both at the end of the NSO, but also at the end of involved government agencies and civil society in terms of producing quality data and using quality data. So what we have seen in the last years is that the international donor communities has almost exclusively built the capacities of national statistic offices to increase their statistical capacities. What we think is donors also have to build the capacities of NSOs to use alternative data, and at the same time they have to increase the capacities of alternative data producers to produce quality data that can match the requirements of government and NSOs. Next slide, maybe. You can find some of these learnings that we have retrieved from this process in our joint lessons learned report. There is a short link where you can find it, and also a QR code. So use your cell phones to scan the QR code. The report is available on the websites both of Partners for Review, the International Civil Society Center, and the Danish Institute for Human Rights. And with that, next slide, please. I'm at the end of my presentation, and I just want to recognize also what has been discussed recently at the UN World Data Forum. We have heard for the first time that the added value of especially civil society data has been appreciated at the high-level panels. It has been referred to by UNSD and by various high-level speakers. I think Thomas Gass, the head of the Swiss Development Agency, said data has to be put back into the hands of the people. And me as a representative of civil society only want to say we are ready to do this and we are ready to contribute. And we hope that with the support of the IAEG-SDGs community and the international statistic community, we can really bring important alternative data sources like civil society data to better and greater use. So thank you very much. And if you want to know more about our work, please visit our website, voicescount.org. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Really interesting presentation, and it's nice to see the collaboration between civil society, the national statistics offices, and policy departments. I think that's really important, and it's great that you were able to link these groups together, and some great country examples there. We have now Mr. Tom Slaymaker from UNICEF. He's going to present on innovative approaches to monitoring 6.1.1 safely managed drinking water services. So I would like to turn the floor over to you, Tom. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the invitation to talk to the IAG. The WHO-UNICEF joint monitoring program is responsible for global monitoring of the SDG targets related to drinking water, sanitation, hygiene, and we produce national, regional, and global estimates for households and also for schools and for healthcare facilities every 2 years. And we published a progress update for households in July this year that's shown on the right-hand side here. I'm going to talk about work we've been doing to support monitoring of SDG 6.1.1 by integrating water quality testing into household surveys. I only have time for brief highlights, but you can read more about that in the report, which is shown on the left here. Next slide, please. So the JMP uses a service ladder to benchmark and compare progress across countries. And this has been updated for the SDGs. So we continue to monitor the population using improved and unimproved water supplies. But those using an improved water source are now divided into 3 categories. So if the source has a collection time of more than 30 minutes, we call that a limited service. If it's an improved source with a collection time of no more than 30 minutes, that's a basic service. But safely managed requires additional information on service levels. So it requires that households have an improved source that is accessible on premises, available when needed, and free from contamination. Now, monitoring SDG 6.1.1, which is the use of safely managed drinking water services, is very challenging, and relatively few countries have nationally representative data on drinking water quality. Next slide, please. So this shows you from our last report that many countries still do not have sufficient national data to report on this indicator. We had estimates for 138 countries in 2020. And we tend to find that the data on accessibility, availability, and quality of drinking water are more widely available for middle and high-income countries. And in particular, data on water quality tend to be only available for urban populations and those using public networks, and are often missing for rural populations and those using private networks. Next slide, please. So what do we mean by free from contamination? For SDG monitoring, we follow the WHO guidelines on drinking water quality, which identify fecal contamination as the top priority for improving health in all countries of the world. And the recommended indicator for fecal contamination is detection of E. coli or thermotolerant coliforms in a 100 milliliter sample. In addition to fecal contamination, the priority chemicals are arsenic and fluoride, which affect some countries, but not all countries. And here, again, we have WHO guidance on the maximum values, so no more than 10 micrograms of arsenic and no more than of fluoride per litre. So these are the parameters that we are. Now, in order to generate the data we need to produce national estimates, we've been collaborating to develop a module for water quality testing in household surveys. Next slide, please. So the JMP has been working with the UNICEF-supported MIPS program, which supports household surveys around the world, has been doing since around 1995. And there is a global team that provides technical support in order to standardize and ensure that the results are comparable. But all of these surveys are generating representative data on probabilistic samples. There are standard questionnaires that are then adapted to country needs, and there are standard tools for each stage of the survey. And so we've developed a full package of support on water quality testing, which is done in a subsample of households. There are a range of tools available for the procurement of materials. There's a manual on water quality testing, a questionnaire, there's a training package, and we also have a pool of consultants who are available to provide support on demand to individual countries that are interested in surveys. Next slide, please. So the questionnaire is relatively straightforward, but enumerators are asking households to provide two samples. One is at the point of use. So please provide me with a glass of water that members of your household would normally drink. And one is at the point of collection. So please show me the point where that water was collected from. So that may be the same location, but in households which are collecting water from a distant source that is not available on premises, then they may be very different. But we collect samples from each, and the data on the point of collection are used for national and global monitoring of SDG 6.1, safely managed drinking water. We have a standard set of equipment shown in the next slide. This is a portable kit, which is adapted based on a standard membrane filtration. So this is something which is routinely used in laboratories around the world. We then have a range of different consumables, and we are filtering the water onto filter paper and then adding that to a growth media, which will then allow the bacteria to grow as they're incubated, and then they can be counted in order to make an assessment of the risk of contamination. So all of these different components are available in the standard kit, and then we are generating results, which are shown on the next slide. And here you can see that once the sample has been filtered onto the paper and is incubated for 24 hours, then you can count the colonies, and the enzyme is specific to E. coli. It will turn blue during incubation if E. coli are present. So if there are no E. coli present, we consider that low risk. If there are between 1 and 10, that is medium risk. Between 11 and 100, high risk, and over 100, very high risk of fecal contamination. So we can use these results to then classify households according to the risk of fecal contamination in drinking water. And we've documented the lessons learned. We've now supported over 30 nationally or sub-nationally representative household surveys around the world. The experience has shown that it is possible to do this with existing survey teams, that the role of the NSO is very important in leading the planning and the implementation and the follow-up, but also engaging the water and sanitation ministries in order to maximize ownership and uptake of the data used. The household survey data on drinking water quality is not a substitute for routine monitoring and surveillance. But it does help to address the data gap, which exists in many low and middle income countries. And it helps to create a demand for strengthening routine monitoring and regulation in future. You can see that we have been able to scale up since the initial pilots in 2012. We're now supporting between 10 and 15 countries each year. It started with the mix, but we have now extended support to other international survey programs, including the LSMS, the World Bank LSMS, the USAID supported DHS surveys, and we're increasingly supporting a number of national household surveys directly, working directly with national statistical offices in order to integrate this module into routine national household surveys. I just want to show you a few of the results that are emerging to give you an idea of the type of data that comes back. What we're finding is that in many countries, we have very widespread contamination, and in some countries, we have very high levels of fecal contamination. This chart is from our last report. In blue here, you can see the proportion of population drinking water that is free from contamination. But in the yellow and the oranges, you can see different levels of contamination. And in some of these countries, we have less than 20% of the population drinking water that is free from contamination. And in some countries, over 40% using sources with very high levels of contamination, shown in orange here. We also find that water quality is very often the limiting factor for safely managed drinking water services. On the next slide here. So this is an example from a recent survey that we supported in Laos. And you can see when we do a breakdown of the proportion of the population with water accessible on premises, 73%, with water available when needed, 80%. But when it comes down to drinking water free from contamination, it comes right down to 16%. And therefore, this is the limiting factor in improving coverage of safely managed drinking water services. And this is a pattern which is common to many of the countries where we have collected data. Of course, when we collect data through a household survey, we are able to disaggregate for different population subgroups, for geographic regions. We're able to disaggregate by the types of supplies that households are using. And we're able to use information on socioeconomic characteristics in order to assess the different risk factors for fecal contamination. These data were compiled for our most recent update to show regional and global estimates on the next slide. And what you can see here is that we now have estimates for 5 out of the 8 SDG regions, but we're still missing data for 3 of the SDG regions, and we are missing data for some large populous countries, which means that we're not able to make regional estimates. We do have a global estimate, and we estimate that in 2020, coverage of safely managed drinking water had risen to 74%, which leaves 1 in 4 of the global population still drinking water that is not contamination. And although data availability is improving, on the last slide, you can see here that with each JMP update, we did an update in 2017, another in 2019, and then our most recent one in 2021. We've seen a steady increase in both the percentage of the population with data available, which is shown with the blue lines, and the number of countries with data available, which is shown in the bars. But we still have a significant proportion of the population and the countries which do not have national estimates. In 2021, we had data for 45% of the national population. You can see data coverage has been improving for both rural and for urban, but the rapid increase in the number of countries with estimates for rural populations, which you see here, has been largely driven by the inclusion of water quality testing in household surveys, which has enabled a threefold increase in the number of countries, from just 20 in 2017 up to 65 in 2021. So that's my presentation, but you can find more information on the data which are currently available, but also the approach to integrating water quality testing in the household surveys on the JMP website, which is shown on my final slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tom. Really interesting presentation, and great to see the level of support being provided to do the water quality testing, and that there's been a great increase in the number of countries that are able to report on this. So that's fantastic. So we now go to our question and answer session for this. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat, and I would like to ask the Secretariat to help me out here on managing the chat and the questions. So if you have a question, please put it in the chat or raise your hand, and I will turn it to the Secretariat to maybe start us on this.
Thank you so much, Kara. It's Heather from UNSD. So I will read just one of the comments that came in on the chat, and then I'll address the first question to Peter. So in Malaysia, one CSO organization is supported by government in terms of allocation and working with NSOs on statistics required for the focus area and project. And the CSO is also on the committee preparing for the VNR. So thank you, Malaysia, for providing that information to everyone at the meeting. Peter, the first question I have is for you. Should social society contribution be part of a national VNR, or be a separate report to give them more freedom to express themselves? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And I would think in terms of the VNR process, you can see this two ways. On the one hand, we appreciate, of course, if there's a strong and independent civil society voice that should be heard regardless of any official reporting from a country. And we are happy about this institution of having people's reports, for example, which are civil society driven and which comment on official reports from government. And these are important institutions where we encourage civil society organizations to take part anyway. But in terms of reaching officially agreed goals and measuring officially agreed indicators, we think that civil society has so far not lived up to its potential, because they hold a wealth of data that can contribute to this. What is lacking are common rules, or a common rule book. And we hope that in the future, by actually starting this exchange, both with the National SDG Unit and with the National Statistics agencies, that we can agree on a way how civil society can also formally contribute to a country's report, because civil society obviously is part of, or is actually what is referred to in a national report. So we think this is some important step that still needs to happen. And so I would actually answer your question with both are important, and the independent report from civil society and the official report where civil society should be involved, but both should be there. Hope that makes sense as an answer.
Thank you so much. It does, absolutely. Okay, so next I would like to go to one of the advanced questions, or one of the questions we received during the registration. And I'll address this to actually all of the presenters if they would like to chime in and address the question, which is, what are the new developments to effectively measure our progress against the SDGs? Perhaps you can provide one or two examples. So I would first, not to put anyone on the spot, but if Faryal, if you wanted to go first, and then we could go down the list to Peter and then Tom. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that question, Heather, and thank you to the audience for bringing that question. So I think I can bring one example from Senegal, and one of them would be the small area estimation work that is being done in Senegal that is being initiated now to further disaggregate the food security indicator. So that would be one example, and the other example I would also give from would be the use of citizen-generated data to measure various SDG indicators. So just to clarify, Heather, is this question related to measuring the SDGs or new developments towards the goals?
The question just says effectively measuring our progress against the SDGs. So, I mean, I think you can take it.
Yes, so those are my two examples, to be very short. So I think talking about the smart estimation, using various data sources and integrating various data sources to disaggregate indicators has been a lot of work is being done in that regard. And then I would also like to mention the overarching work that is being done, for example, in ANSD on the IT architecture. So that is to innovate the data IT architecture, so to improve the efficiency, timeliness, and access of data that would contribute to measuring the progress and accelerating the progress towards the goal. Thank you. Over to you, Heather.
Thank you so much, Faryal. I really appreciate it. Next, Peter, it's the same question. If you want to answer, what are new developments to effectively measure our progress against the SDGs? If you have any examples you'd like to share.
Well, would have to think a bit about it, but I think also that in the recent years, also on an advocacy level, looking at the indicator framework, there has been a lot of involvement on how to measure specific indicators, especially around SDG 16, where official data has a lot of knowledge gaps. And I think also from a civil society perspective, there were important inputs made jointly by our members, Save the Children and UNICEF, to develop some indicators further, which also have been acknowledged by the Statistical Commission in the last year. So we are happy that also from a civil society level, we can make a contribution to how SDGs are measured. And more importantly, I think also that we have more and more initiatives that are coming from civil society that look into SDG monitoring. And I mean, one of our partner countries in India, for example, have a wonderful initiative called the 100 Hotspots. They reach out across India to identify, to find monitoring data on the most 26, I think, marginalized communities in India. And these are really hard to reach groups like nomadic tribes, sex workers, and various other marginalized groups, and that you have dedicated forces whose ambition it is to really reach out to these groups and to capture and map them on the SDG map is absolutely brilliant, that this kind of efforts are taking place. And as I said, this is complementary information to what is already happening on the official level with official data. So I'm looking optimistic into the future that more knowledge gaps will be closed, especially on marginalized communities.
Thank you, Peter. That was excellent information. We appreciate it. So next, I would like to turn the same question to Tom. And in addition, we have another question also from Malaysia. So if you'll just give me a second, I'll repeat them, or both. What are new developments to effectively measure our progress against the SDGs, if you would like to share any examples? And then also for the WHO-UNICEF Joint Monitoring Program for Water Supply, Sanitation, and Hygiene, this is from Malaysia. Can we get the information on the partner at country level? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Heather. I think these are good questions. I think I would probably highlight three things in terms of innovation. One is around the data coverage. I think we are seeing data coverage improving. So in the example I gave around drinking water quality, the fact that we now have data for rural areas, which was previously completely missing, the fact that we are able to collect information that can be disaggregated for different population subgroups. We have lots of examples now where we can really not only understand how prevalent the problem is, but also the inequalities between different population subgroups and different geographic regions of the country, which is very powerful for targeted interventions. The other is around the data quality. So we've seen a sort of progressive harmonization of definitions and standards which are applied in the area of drinking water quality. Previously, we had different parts of government using different metrics, and so as you know, different parts of government come together around commonly agreed metrics, it becomes much easier to aggregate the data and to be able to track progress over time. And then thirdly, the cost. I think even in a short period of time, we've seen the costs of water quality testing coming down continuously as the availability of equipment, which was previously only available in laboratories, is now available for use in the field. We're able to do these tests at around $2.50 per household, which means it's something that can be done at scale in low and middle income countries, and therefore it's much easier to collect nationally representative data. So those are the three sort of key areas where we see a lot of innovation happening at the moment. And then on the question from Malaysia, so we will provide either technical support or possibly also financial support for this kind of work through our UNICEF and WHO country offices. So that would be the first point of contact for the team in Malaysia. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Tom. Really appreciate it. I'll just read one additional comment from the chat and then pass it back to the chair. In Malawi, we included, this is from Malawi, we included the water quality assessment questionnaire in the 2020 mix. We have managed to get very critical and revealing data on the supposedly clean water. So thank you very much, Mercy, for sharing that. Thank you to all of the presenters for the Q&A, and I will pass it back to Kara. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Heather, and thank you for all the questions and the responses. I'd like to thank our presenters for their presentations today. Some really interesting work that's being done. And now we are at the point where we're going to have a short 5-minute break. So it is 9:14 a.m. by my clock. So we will be back at 9:20. So you get 6 minutes. Or whatever time it is, wherever you are, but you have 6 minutes now. So we'll have a short break. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. We are now at item 15 on the agenda, which is capacity building for SDGs, and we have 6 presentations. So if you could please put your questions in the chat so they can be addressed at the end of the 6 presentations. And I also like to remind our presenters to please keep to time as we're running a little bit behind. Our first presenter is Ms. Yonggi Min of UNSD, who will present on the CCSA IAEG initiative on capacity building knowledge base. And you may recall that I alluded to this in the presentation of the IAEG CCSA meetings, and it was the 5th recommendation made. So over to you, Yonggi.
Actually, Karen, sorry, we had a switch in the agenda. Do you want to go ahead with that, Yonggi, or?
Yeah, I think maybe, sorry, Kara, I was wondering if Juan Daniel can present first, and I'll switch with him. I cannot hear you, Kara.
Sorry, no problem at all. We have no problem doing that. Just let me grab my notes here. So our presentation is going to be, hang on, I'm sorry, I'm moving in my own notes here. So we have the presentation by Mr. Juan Daniel Oviedo, the Chief Statistician for Colombia, who's going to talk to us about capacity building initiatives developed by Colombia, CEPE, and the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development. Mr. Oviedo, the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Cara. Very happy to see you. Thank you very much for conducting the meeting. I'm going to allow myself to share my screen in order to share with you a short message about these pilot projects that we've been developing with an important partnership with CEPE and the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development Data. We are very happy to share with you this experience that is intended for motivating some other countries or some other organizations to join us in this, let's say, hands-on collaboration model that we are trying to make it very effective as regards as the capacity building that we require in order to improve the capabilities of in the measurement of the Sustainable Development Goals indicators. First of all, we would like, in a very humble way, to share with you which is the role of Colombia in the Interagency Expert Group for Sustainable Development Goals. We currently are a country member and a co-chair of the group together with Canada, and at the same time, we are part of the 3 working groups of the Interagency Expert Group, namely the Geospatial Information Working Group, the SDMX Working Group, and the Measurement for Development Support Working Group, that we have the opportunity also to be co-chairs of this challenging subgroup of the Interagency Expert Group. And at the same time, we are a country member of the subgroup of the metadata review. And in this perspective and our broad participation in the several dimensions of collaboration and collective building, let's say, of the Interagency Expert Group, is a demonstration of the recognition that we have as a country of the SDG indicators framework and the conceptual frameworks which lie behind the measurement of Sustainable Development Goals indicators, and more importantly, the methodological tools that are developed in this important interagency expert group. What we want to make it different is that we are looking forward to spreading knowledge about the results that we obtain from the important discussions that are held most of the times by Karen Chavez, who is an advisor and the SDG coordinator of the General Direction of the National Statistics Office of Colombia. And I take the opportunity to thank her very much for her tremendous work in this dimension. But we would like to share the experiences and to make real the discussions are the advancement from the methodological perspective that we discuss and that we construct in the interagency expert group. And that's why, more than spreading knowledge, we are looking forward to supporting countries in order to perform capacity building exercises that have concrete results in terms of the implementation of the SDGs indicator framework. In this willingness to collaborate and to develop capabilities as regards as the SDG indicators framework implementation, we've been developing several workshops together with CEPEI and the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development Data. The first family of workshops that you might see in my screen is that the integration of statistical and geospatial information in order to advance in the measurement or the complete measurement of SDG indicator 911 and the SDG indicator 1131. The first one is related with the measurement of the distance of rural population to a highway or a transport means with less than 2 kilometers. And the second one is how we are tying together the cities expansion with demographic population, something that we are going to detail afterwards. And there is a very important methodological workshop, which is the SDMX workshop that is being held in this moment. And there we look forward to sharing the experiences of the statistical standard for exchange of data and metadata from the statistical perspective, which is the SDMX, or as an enabling platform for the reporting of the Sustainable Development Goals. As you might see, the first workshop, we developed the first workshop in the month of May, and we had the participation of several countries as Brazil, Ecuador, Peru, Uruguay, and Colombia, several institutions under which you might see that in this indicator 911, we are looking forward to obtaining the proportion of the rural population living in 2 kilometers of a road, which is passable all year round. And regarding indicator 1111, which is the relationship between the land consumption rate and the population growth rate, we performed the workshop with the participation of several African countries as the Republic of Cabo Verde, Ghana, Senegal, Namibia, and from Latin American and Caribbean countries, we had the participation of Chile, Costa Rica, Jamaica, Paraguay, and Dominican Republic, under which in the month of August, we had the opportunity to learn about the new methodologies that we are appraising in order to obtain these indicators, and at the same time, to go in a hands-on way and developing some specific pilot projects, which are, let's say, a continuous learning model that we are trying to implement in this capacity building model. For example, in the workshops that are or concern the integration of the statistical and geospatial information, we had the idea to set or to develop an informal working group of international partners that currently is working in order to support in a hands-on calculation of such indicators in several countries. And you are going to have the you are going to have the opportunity to see what Colombia has advanced in this methodology in the link that you are going to have the presentation that Karen is going to share with you afterwards when we finish the presentation. That's why we are trying to set this capacity building model starting from collaboration with a hands-on perspective, but let's say doing homeworks or a hands-on methodology under which we have a continuous learning experience of putting into practice the discussions that we learn or we share in the workshops. For example, in these pilot projects, we have the case of Ecuador, under which they are measuring indicator 1131 in a specific or a circumscribed area of the country, and Peru is starting to measure the indicator 911 with the population and housing census that they performed in the year 2017 and using ArcGIS tools for its calculation. At the same time, in the more, let's say, methodological workshop from the perspective of very technical developments that we share in the SDMX standard in order to report the Sustainable Development Goals indicators for country members. This is a workshop which is being held currently in the end of October and the beginning of November. We have the participation of Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, Uruguay, and Paraguay, under which we are in a hands-on way sharing the experience of Colombia, for example, in the reporting of the SDGs indicator framework through the SDMX platform, and at the same time discussing in a very smart way how to develop the data structure definitions for the sustainable development goals in our countries. Which are the next steps? And this is the main slide of our presentation. It's an invitation, a kind invitation to join us in this kind of exercises under which we need to identify prospective demands and the willingness of several countries to participate around the world in these capacity building models that, as you see, are putting into practice this partnership perspective and this hands-on perspective of the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals. That's why we are about to set in a consultation process, a very dynamic and light consultation process under which we could capture which are the interests of your countries or institutions, and at the same time, which are the more detailed requirements that you could express in this consultation process that we are about to set in the following weeks. And at the same time, we would like to invite some interdisciplinary new partners, for example, custodian agencies, the secretariat of the group, of another groups that are going to be shown in this item 15 of the meeting in order to team up together, and at the same time to find novel ways of collaboration and capacity building, which are based in some hands-on projects under which we could learn some advancements from the methodological perspectives that are being set by the interagency expert group, but having some dynamic and very applied cases in order to provide results and learning together. We could have some perspectives of why not innovating in the measurement of sustainable development goals indicators. Thank you very much. And we are more than happy to listen to willingness to participate in this capacity building model. And Karen is going to be very, very, very attentive in order to solve any requirements or solve any inquiries that you might have about the presentation that we have just finished. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for this presentation. The workshops are undoubtedly key for to help countries develop the capacities to report on the two indicators that you mentioned. And of course, the SDMX workshop is, I'm sure, very well appreciated by all as countries learn to use it for the transfer of information. So thank you very much for that. I believe we're going back to our first presentation, which is from Yonggi. So Yonggi, I think you're going to present on the UNSD CCA, or the IAEG CCA initiative on capacity building. So I will turn the floor to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kara. I'll take time. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. So this initiative on capacity building knowledge base is based on the joint meeting of the co-chair of IAEG and the CCSA. Next slide, please. So at the commission, at the 52nd session of the commission, many member states request support on enhancing technical and financial support for country to build capacity for the production of SDG indicators. Particularly, they mentioned they need support for the indicator with low data availability. And so based on this request and other requests from IAEG members, so the IAEG co-chairs and CCS co-chairs had a few meetings to discuss how to address the need. And I think from yesterday's presentation, Angela and Kara's presentation, the CCSA decided to send out assessment survey to its member on capacity building activity by custodian agency, and also to other organizations such as the Regional Commission and other regional organizations that support the production of the SDG indicators. And the IAEG will take this material and make them available on the website and to create a capacity building knowledge base. And the information will be a report to the UN Statistical Commission next year. Next slide, please. So as of 2nd of November, we have received the response from about 23 international and regional organizations, which include 4 regional commissions and 19 international and regional organizations. Next slide, please. So here's some example on the information they provide from the organizations on capacity building program and activities. For example, ADB has a guide on mapping poverty through data integration and artificial intelligence. And UN Women has a toolkit on counted and visible toolkit. And there's many other organizations provide either seminar or training material or e-learning materials. Next slide, please. And there's also like a training provider per indicators. So we also listed, this is some examples of the capacity building program by indicators. Next slide, please. So based on all this information collected, a capacity building knowledge base website will be set up on the IAEG website, which will compile all the capacity building activities and the resources provided by the custodian agency and regional commission and other international and regional organizations that support the production of SDG indicators and broader SDG monitors. So the website will contain capacity building activities and resources by goal and target indicator, and also by topic if the capacity building cover more than one indicator or it's cover a broader SDG monitor areas. Also by region, this is mainly from input from the regional commissions and other regional organizations. So this website will include web links and reference materials. And the UNSD will follow up with all the custodian agencies who hasn't response to the survey, and also going to follow up with the SDG indicator focal points, and to try to get as many information and resources as possible to build up this capacity building knowledge base. Thank you all very much. This is the end of my presentation. Over to you, Kara.
Excellent. Thank you, Yonggi. I think it's going to be really useful to have capacity building knowledge base, as it will enable the countries to find and better access the capacity building initiatives and tools being developed by the custodian agencies for the SDGs. So I'm now going to turn to our next presentation that's related to create a collective action for the implementation of the Cape Town Global Action Plan and smarter financing of data. Ms. Yuri Yata from Paris 21 and the Bern Network Coordinator is going to be giving this presentation. Yuri, the floor is yours, and I believe you have 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kara, and greetings to everyone. Now, as we're looking at capacity building for the SDGs in this final session of the meeting, I wanted to bring our focus to the issue of financing for statistical capacity development and data. And in this presentation, to also share with you what collective actions are being taken by a number of partners and organizations, including Paris 21, UNSD, World Bank, and many others, through a network called the Bern Network, in order to advance this agenda and to develop new solutions and tools to collectively support it. Next slide, please. But let me first take a few steps back and come back to the Cape Town Global Action Plan from 2017, which, as we all know, provides a holistic roadmap for the modernization of national statistical systems to be fit to respond to the data demands of the 2030 agenda. But I think, as most of us know, there are significant implementation challenges that remain, and national statistical offices face considerable capacity and resourcing gaps, some of which we just heard about in the implementation of this plan. And I think we've really seen also that these challenges have only become more acute during the COVID-19 pandemic. And as a matter of fact, in a recent survey from this summer, run by UNSD, the World Bank, and Paris 21, we saw that over 90% of NSOs in low and lower middle income countries are currently facing shortages in financial resources to respond to the demand for statistical outputs. So I think this really highlights that we urgently need not only more financing, both from domestic resources, but also external sources and aid providers, but also more efficient and, let's say, smarter financing, so the limited resources, especially in the current pandemic environment, can go farther. And this has been the focus of the work of the Bern Network on financing data for development, which, as the name implies, is a multi-stakeholder alliance founded in 2019, and which is made up of NSOs from low and middle income countries, as well as developed countries, development cooperation agencies, and a number of other expert and multilateral organizations. And it really focuses on fostering holistic actions to achieve more and better financing for data. And we at Paris 21 are the secretariat for this network. And the Bern Network actually brings together many of you in this meeting here today from both NSOs as well as multilateral agencies. And I mentioned UNSD and the World Bank earlier, but there's also Switzerland, the UK, and many others who also sit on the core group of the network. If you could go back one slide, please, Paul. Thank you. And just to say here that together in this network, we've been working to synergize and amplify institutional initiatives by developing a number of linkages and joint actions to really collectively bring a bit more coherence and also to move the smarter data financing agenda forward and support the implementation and operationalization of the Cape Town Global Action Plan. And we've done this in consultation and collaboration with a number of countries, listening to your voices and also understanding your needs, and also with the guidance received from the high-level group as well as others. So what are these actions? I wanted to zoom in on one joint solution we've developed, which is called the Clearinghouse for Financing Development Data. And I believe it's already been mentioned a couple of times over the course of this meeting. And I wanted to just spend the next few slides introducing you to this a little bit more deeply. So the Clearinghouse, as you can see on the slide, is an online platform that was developed by the Bern Network partners and launched formally at the UN World Data Forum last month as one of the official outcomes of the forum. And what it aims to do is really to support more and better financing for data by providing timely information to better match the need for and the supply of statistical support. And the clearinghouse really does so by drawing on a range of data sources, as well as information sourced directly from aid recipient countries. And it allows users to visualize and analyze existing and expected funding flows and opportunities for data and statistics, including by specific policy areas, as well as SDGs. And you can look at this at the country, at the regional, and the global levels. It also allows you to access a series of profiles on multilateral and bilateral donors. We have 7 up on the platform right now. And it also provides access to information on over 15,000 statistical projects, which we're adding to every day, and also 23 IDA country profiles, including 4 in-depth profiles offering information going beyond the financing flows to and the needs of the NSO, but several other line ministries in the NSS. So this is available for Malawi, Rwanda, Niger, and the Gambia, just for your information. And the clearinghouse also allows users to find key advocacy resources and good practices, and offers a dedicated channel on gender data financing with thematic information up for all of these different elements. And we're looking at maybe exploring and building on this thematic focus areas to other themes in the future. And now finally, the platform also provides community features to facilitate interactions, partnership building, and also to promote peer learning among users. So the idea is very much to not just have an information platform, but have something that helps build a community of practice. Next slide, please. So you can see here just briefly the clearinghouse page, the homepage, which is available and accessible to everyone at smartdatafinance.org. So I'm also happy to pop that in the chat afterwards. And I did want to just highlight here that the platform as it currently stands is a prototype, and we will continue to consolidate it over the coming months. And in this context, we would very much welcome your feedback and engagement as we not only build a user community, but as we explore further data partnerships for the platform, and also look at how we can expand the information we offer in the future. So it would be great to hear from you and to get your views on using the platform. Now, you've heard here with the clearinghouse, one collective solution, let's say, that we've developed to facilitate financing flows for the implementation of the Cape Town Global Action Plan, among other things. And in fact, the clearinghouse actually complements another mechanism that has been newly launched, and that is the World Bank's Global Data Facility. And I believe Craig from the World Bank will be presenting that just after me, so I won't say more. But maybe just to highlight that these 2 mechanisms are very much complementary and interlinked, and deliberately so. And we're looking for the clearinghouse to really be an information and community platform that can support the work of the facility. So we will continue to look at these linkages and to foster development and develop them going forward. Next slide, please. Now, I just wanted to finish my presentation by mentioning that both the clearinghouse and the data facility are informed by the results of a joint survey of NSOs that we ran by, so the UNSD, World Bank, and Paris 21 that we ran in the summer of this year from August to September. And I believe you've heard maybe about this already on the first day of this meeting, so I won't go into too much detail, but maybe just to highlight that this survey is yet another way we have taken collective action to really understand the capacity and financing needs for NSOs for the implementation of the Global Action Plan. And we've received responses from over 100 NSOs, including about 30 IDA countries, and we use this information directly for the prototype clearinghouse I just presented. So a report on the results is forthcoming, I believe, before the end of the year. So let me stop here. We will continue building on these collective actions through collaborations and partnerships. So please do get in touch if you have any questions about either the clearinghouse or the Bern Network. I will pop my email address in the chat, and you can see the email address to the Secretariat on the screen. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Yuri. A really interesting presentation, and love to see the platform there. That's great, and it's really good that we're examining not only what to do, but also how to do it. I'm now going to turn to our next presenter, whom Yuri so kindly set up nicely, Mr. Craig Hammer from the World Bank, who will be giving us a presentation about the Global Data Facility. Craig, you have 10 minutes for your presentation, and I will give you the floor.
Thank you very much, Karen, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I am sorry for breaking protocol and not having a slide deck, so I'm just going to speak for a few minutes, hopefully less than 10, about the Global Data Facility. I first want to thank you for the chance to discuss the Global Data Facility, and particularly its emphasis on capacity development in support of the 2030 Agenda, as well as alignment and synergy with key initiatives, including the Berne Networks Clearinghouse, as Jerry had just mentioned, as well as the work of other key partners that was discussed in these last few days. I'm particularly pleased to speak about the crucial collaboration between the UNSC's High-Level Group for Partnership Coordination Capacity Building, the HLG, with country counterparts, UNSD, the Berne Network, and with a range of global centers of excellence, which made the now launched Global Data Facility possible. It was launched at the recent UN World Data Forum in Berne in October. And as such, I'm really delighted to follow Jurai for many reasons, but in particular because she so clearly set out the challenges and opportunities for more.
Craig, you seem to have been muted there. If you could try to unmute yourself again, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, all right. And during the audio test, I believe that my audio clips off and on occasionally. So I'm sorry, you may have to bear with me if it disappears for a couple of seconds and then it comes back. I'll just proceed, and then we can move on to some questions if there's time. So I was just mentioning that I'm delighted to follow Jurai for many reasons, but in particular because she so clearly said from the capacity of national data systems to help overcome data deprivation and better enable the implementation of the Cape Town Global Action Plan and to help achieve the 2030 Agenda. The HLG had asked the World Bank to develop a new funding mechanism in Dubai at the second UN World Data Forum to not only enable more and better financing for countries' data and statistics priorities and needs, but also to facilitate better global collaboration and coordination to provide this support. I'm proud to say that thanks to this intensive effort with country clients, key partners around the world, the Global Data Facility is the result. Together, we've been able to rise to this challenge, but this is only the beginning, and there is indeed a long road ahead. The genesis of the Global Data Facility is rooted in stark reality. As Jurai had mentioned, more than 110 low and middle income countries still lack the resources and technical assistance needed to modernize their data systems, leaving many millions of people vulnerable. And the COVID-19 pandemic just made the situation worse. Indeed, according to the survey that Jurai had mentioned, conducted last year, an earlier iteration of the survey, national statistics offices in low and lower middle income countries were the hardest hit by the pandemic. A more recent round of the survey has found that 9 out of 10 had difficulty in meeting their international reporting requirements, as opposed to 5 out of 10 in high-income countries. The HLG has emphasized this changing the situation requires both mobilization of domestic resources and a more coordinated approach to external aid, with a particular focus on supporting implementation on the Cape Town Global Action Plan and enabling the achievement of the SDGs. And so, the new Global Data Facility will enable exponential improvements of and strengthened human capacity for data collection, data management, data governance, data analysis, data sharing, data use, data reuse for transformational social and economic development. It will mobilize and coordinate support, including collaboration with the Berne Networks Clearinghouse, and will leverage donor resources to catalyze further financing, including World Bank loans to support data and statistics fundamentals and frontiers across low and middle-income countries. It will likewise enable long-term support by strengthening domestic investments in data and statistics. On the financing side, the fundraising side, we're off to a strong start, I'm happy to say, with support already coming in from the European Union, the IMF. Interest has also been expressed by several development partners and other foundations. But as I said, the facility is now just a few weeks old, and the hard work to crowd in new commitments to better scale up country support is really just beginning. This means now is the time for concrete financial commitments. Now is the moment for every development partner to step up, and now is the opportunity for us all to work together to amplify the message and priorities of the Cape Town Global Action Plan and the 2030 Agenda in one voice. And if we miss this moment, it'll be difficult to demonstrate that we're doing all we can to maximize this as a decade of action. This is a challenge for all of us, and I hope we can all meet this moment. And on behalf of the World Bank, I want to emphasize that we are all in. Indeed, the bank's senior leadership has identified the Global Data Facility as a top World Bank priority trust fund, representing global, national, and subnational priorities. To add more momentum to this call, I'm also proud to say that we're working closely with UNSD and key partners to plan and launch a Development Partners Forum during the World Bank's spring meetings in April next year. This will be an opportunity for donors and partners to share new commitments to support development data and statistics priorities and join hands with each other in support of clear and shared agenda. We're indebted to groups like the IAEG for its technical leadership and for inspiring the global development data and statistics community to join together to support this work in service of achieving the SDGs, and will continue to rely on your guidance. By way of next steps, again, we're about to form a technical advisory group for the Global Data Facility. We'll soon approach partners for nominations to populate this group. Together, development partners and this technical advisory group will come together in the coming months to finalize a set of initial priorities to be supported by the Global Data Facility, drawn from the Cape Town Global Action Plan priorities and in service of the 2030 Agenda, and informed by insights from the Bern Network Clearinghouse and other key sources of country demand. Eligibility criteria for governments and organizations to apply for these resources will also then be defined. The resources will then be allocated through a series of successive financing windows, which most of will occur through a call for proposals model to facilitate direct support to countries through our data and statistics priorities. And they'll be organized around these priorities based on the final eligibility criteria. We estimate that at least 2 windows will be launched in 2022, with more windows launching thereafter. And information and timelines will be posted on the Global Data Facility's website, which is available on the World Bank website, and I'll pop that in the chat in just a moment. We're currently planning for a call for proposals under an inaugural financing window under the Global Data Facility to open in earlier mid-2022, likely with a focus on public goods, with a focus on modernization of economic statistics. And additional windows will be announced throughout the year and beyond. These details will also shortly be added to the facility's website in an effort to ensure clarity on next steps. We look forward to working closely with you and our additional colleagues on these next steps, and we'll share details as they come on the website. Thank you so much for the chance to discuss this. I am sorry for the audio issue. I hope you got at least more than half of what I've just said, but I'm also happy to take any questions during the Q&A. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much, Craig. What a great new initiative by the World Bank. I think this is really awesome and really exciting to help countries be able to report on, and as we know, what gets reported on gets actioned on. So that's a super initiative. It's very exciting. I think we're going to go now to our next presenter. And our fifth presentation is related to UN Stats Division, Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office collaboration related to resources and tools. And Mr. Richard Tonkin and Ms. Heather Page from UNSD are going to do this presentation. So I will turn the floor over to you both. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So my name's Richard Tonkin, and I'm responsible for coordinating what's known as the UNSD FCDA project on SDG monitoring. And together with my colleague Heather Page, we'll be briefly sharing some information on some of the many tools and resources that have been made available already by the project, along with some additional ones that we're hoping to launch over the coming year. So I'll start by just giving a very brief introduction to the project before going on to give an overview of some of those resources and tools. And I'll then pass over to Heather, who's going to share a little bit more detail on one of the newest resources developed by the project, the SDG and COVID-19 Data Visualization Toolkit. Okay, so next slide, please. And again. Okay, so the UNSD FCDA project is funded by the UK's Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. It's been working with 20 countries across Asia and Africa since the end of December 2017, with the project due to come to a close in summer next year. The overall aims of the project are to help improve the capacity of project countries to monitor SDG progress, to increase the availability of SDG indicators at both the national and international levels, and improve coordination of national statistical systems around SDG indicators. Next slide. Obviously, we've had some very challenging circumstances over the last 18 months, but actually All of the project countries have been very active during the pandemic, and as a result, we've seen some hugely impressive achievements. Nearly all of the project countries have launched national SDG data platforms, improving the accessibility of data for their users. And many of these platforms have subsequently been incorporated into VNRs as well as national SDG progress reporting. In many countries, we've seen improved coordination and increased data sharing across the NSS for bringing together this SDG data. Project countries have also developed user engagement strategies to help identify the needs of different groups of users and ensure that they're reflected in activities and priorities. Next slide. Thank you. So countries have compiled national SDG metadata according to international standards, have disseminated it to their users, and data exchange using SDMX standards has also been established between the countries, UNSD, and other international partners. And since the start of the pandemic, the project has also provided support to countries' COVID-19 data responses, including on the establishment of COVID-19 data hubs and improved data visualization. And as we'll hear a bit more about that from Heather later on. So next slide, please. Okay, so in supporting countries in delivering these achievements, the project has developed quite a range of different resources and tools. And as the project comes to an end, we're very keen to make these available as widely as possible so that they're available not just to project countries to refer back to, but also for other countries setting out to achieve similar goals. We're sharing these resources through the project website as they become available, URL for which you can see on this slide. There are a number of sections of the website which are likely to be of particular interest to users. So first of all, there's the country pages. We have a page set up for each of the countries, so you can see what individual countries have been up to, find a link to their data platforms, and also read about their other achievements. I personally think these are incredibly helpful if you want to get ideas for how to implement things. Each country has its own unique approaches reflecting national context, so it's a really helpful resource. The activities section, as the name suggests, provides information on some of the different activities which have made up the project, including those relating to SDG platforms, data and metadata compilation according to SDMX standards, and user engagement. And again, from here, you're able to access a lot of the information and resources which have been produced through the project. The meetings section is actually so much more than just meetings. It contains all the materials from the face-to-face trainings and recordings of various webinars and online workshops that have been held as part of the project. And there are also recordings of presentations given by many of the countries sharing what they've done and what the impacts have been. And finally, there's the resources section, which, as you'd expect, contains links to many different resources which will be of wide use, including the aforementioned SDG and COVID-19 data visualization toolkit. So next slide, please. So just to focus in quickly on a couple of areas, the first being e-learning. As I've mentioned, we've developed a lot of training materials for the project. First for delivering face-to-face workshops, but more recently for remote online trainings. We're now working to try and translate these as much as possible into e-learning courses. One course is already available, e-learning on national metadata compilation, which you can find both from the project website and also from the UN SDG Learn platform. This course covers topics going from the basics of why SDG metadata is important through to how to draft metadata using the recently developed SDG metadata authoring tool template. And we're also in the process of developing two other e-learning courses, one on user engagement for the SDGs, and the second, more technical one on SDMX data modeling. We've also got some planned improvements coming for the metadata course. Next slide, please. We're also in the process of developing a series of micro-learning videos. These are short videos which are designed to give practical step-by-step guidance on key topics. Really, we see these as serving two purposes. They're designed, first of all, to be able to be integrated into and support the e-learnings I've just mentioned, but they're also designed to stand alone, so be very useful if you want guidance on a specific issue or just need a refresher on one particular area of a topic. The initial micro-learning videos which have been produced include topics on some very technical issues, such as using the SDMX metadata authoring tool templates. However, we're soon going to have some becoming available on a much wider range of topics, including how to engage with users online, writing press releases, and writing for social media, among others. These are going to be available from the project website as soon as they're ready. So I'm now going to pass over to Heather, who's going to give us a slightly more in-depth look at the SDG COVID-19 data visualization toolkit. Over to you, Heather.
Thank you so much, Richard. Really appreciate it. So for the next couple slides, I just want to go a little more in depth into the SDG and COVID-19 data visualization toolkit, and we can go to the next slide, please. So this toolkit this toolkit was developed as part of the UNSD FCDO project on SDG monitoring and aims to support countries in data storytelling through infographics, reports, online platforms, presentations, promotion materials, and social media. And the toolkit includes over 300 icons for both COVID-19 and the SDG goals. The icons are available in SVG format, meaning that they are scalable vector graphics and that they can be easily dragged and dropped into your Microsoft programs, as well as Adobe Illustrator and other Adobe programs. And the templates utilize the icons, and they were created for infographics, reports, brochures, flyers, and social media products. And these templates were developed in various formats so that all countries can take advantage of them. They're available in Adobe Illustrator, InDesign, PowerPoint, and Word formats. So we try to allow or provide the material in a way that can be used kind of low tech and high tech. The toolkit link is included here, and in the next slides, I'll just go a little bit more into it. So why icons? And essentially, we have a lot of practice and have used icons a lot in a lot of the SDG reporting, and they're used to communicate information without the need for words. They're very small design elements, but they can have a very large impact on your audience. They're effective at grabbing users' attention when highlighting important data, and they're also a strong tool for conveying messages, especially on SDG and COVID-19 tracking and progress. Next slide, please. So here is the toolkit. It was launched in September, just this past month, and this just kind of gives a bit of a highlight of what you would find in each of the goals. And so you'll have a page that has an overview of all of the icons, and then you'll have pages that give short descriptions or description names for each of the icons as well. Next slide, please. So next, I wanted to go through some of the templates and just very briefly. So for instance, here, the infographics template in the toolkit is both a template and example of a finished infographic using the icons and suggested design and content elements. Users can reference these when creating an infographic, which aims to integrate the icons with the subject matter. And the files for the infographics are available, as you can see here, in Adobe Illustrator, but also in PowerPoint. And more details on the layout of the infographics are included in the toolkit. Next slide, please. And we have the same also for some SDG and COVID-19 report templates. The idea here is to provide kind of a base or at least ideas for how to design the reporting based on COVID-19 or on SDGs and incorporating the icons. And we again provided in two different formats in case you don't have a designer on your team or Adobe software, and you want to be able to incorporate and use the icons and the design elements and ideas from the toolkit, potentially in Word or in PowerPoint or in other programs. Next slide, please. Additionally, we provide an example of a brochure template because this was a request actually from countries that are trying to develop outreach material for their data collection activities. And so again, here we provided in 2 different file formats, incorporating and utilizing the icons and certain design elements that are included in the toolkit. Next slide, please. So the next steps for the toolkit are to potentially include the icons in the Noun project. And this is, it's the most diverse collection of icons and stock photos ever, they say. And so the idea is that we could potentially include the icons there so that the resources has an even wider reach. In addition, we would like to have some micro-learning opportunities demonstrating how to develop some of the materials in some of the different platforms, and also some tips and tricks to keep in mind when designing and developing your SDG and COVID-19 materials utilizing the icons. And I would like to just encourage everyone to go check it out. We've worked really hard on this template on this toolkit. And we're very excited to start seeing the icons everywhere. And so I just want to thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Super exciting to see the toolkit for the data visualization and reports, etc. I think, you know, one of the key things is not just about being able to compile the data, but it's also about how do we tell the story and how do we disseminate that information. So it's really exciting work that's being done. So we're on to our final presentation under agenda item 15. And that's Ms. Pauline Stockins from the UN ECLAC, who will discuss the supply and demand of SDG statistical capacity building activities in Latin America and the Caribbean. Pauline, you have the floor. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Kara. I will share my screen. Okay, can you see it there?
Yes, we do.
Okay, thank you. So thank you, and good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. And thank you to giving us a time to quickly present you what we have called linking the supply and the demand on SDG statistical capacity building activities in Latin America and the Caribbean. Let me start by giving you some background information on ECLAC capacity building for the SDGs. Well, ECLAC is part of a system-wide effort to support the implementation of the 2030 Agenda, which includes, among others, the strengthening the capacities of member states to collect, process, analyze, and disseminate data, statistics, and indicators for evidence-based decision-making in the region. This is done in different domains as social, demographic, economic, and environmental statistics. Within these areas, support is provided to improve existing statistical sources and processes, as well as foster the development of administrative records and non-traditional data sources such as geospatial information and big data. Work on data sources is complemented with the support for the institutional strengthening of national statistical systems and coordination of data producers and users. Particularly in the field of the SDGs, ECLAC coordinates its activities being part of 2 different groups. As the Technical Secretariat of the Statistical Coordination Group for the 2030 Agenda in Latin America and the Caribbean, and as part of the Statistics and Data Group of the Regional Collaborative Platform for Latin America and the Caribbean, RCP-LAC. The Statistical Coordination Group for the 2030 Agenda comprises countries that are part of the IAEG-SDGs and the HLG-PPCB, and representative of agencies, funds, and programs of the United System with presence in the region. Since its creation, the group provides strategic leadership in the process of implementing the SDGs in the region regarding the development and calculation of indicators, statistical monitoring, and reporting. The group fosters cooperation and coordination, including by ensuring coherence between regional and global follow-up. On the other hand, the Statistic and Data Group continues the work of the UNDG LAC, created in 2007 and 2016, with the purpose of coordinating and harmonizing the support given by the United Nations system to the countries of Latin America and the Caribbean for the implementation of the 2030 Agenda. The group is intended to coordinate actions aimed at strengthening statistical capacities and encourage the exchange of information with United Nations agencies at the global and other relevant national and regional institutions. It is within the scope of these two groups that we have been making efforts to find out the national capacities of the countries to produce the indicators of the SDGs and the need of technical cooperation, as well as get to know and coordinate the cooperation activities provided by the UN system in the field of statistics for the SDGs. Here we have a timeline where we can see at the top of the slide the efforts being made to identify the national statistical capacities, undertaken and identify the capacity building activities at the bottom of the slide. Regarding the national statistical capacities, it was in 2016 when the National Statistical Capabilities Questionnaire was implemented for the first time with the direct support of the National Institute of Statistics and Census of Ecuador and the National Institute of Statistics and Geography of Mexico. The aim of the exercise was to have an initial overview of the capabilities of the countries, including a description of the statistical production process for each of the SDG indicators. Since then, 2 abbreviated annual updates of the diagnosis were conducted. But with the aim of having a system that could allow a continuously and permanently updating of the information, ECLAC has been working during the last year in the implementation of an online system that we expect to release early next year. Now, if we move to the bottom of the slide, we can see the efforts made to identify and coordinate the capacity building activities aimed at improving the monitoring of the SDGs. At the end of 2018, the UN agency funds and programs working in the region agreed to systemize the capacity building activities they were undertaken in the region. The collection of information was made by sending them an Excel files, but the results were then gathered into a database, which was the basis of an online information system. The online information system was developed by ECLAC, UNFPA, UN Women, and UNICEF as a planning and reporting tool on the activities carried out by the international agencies in the region. The system provides 2 types of information: activities aimed at improving the measurement, use, and dissemination of the SDGs indicators, and the activities aimed at improving and implementing data collection operations. Regarding the information system on national statistical capacities, here we can see a part of the system. After signing up, you enter the homepage and you will find 4 models. One is for entering the information by indicators. The one is to see online reports. Another one is to create users. And the last one is to create groups. These 2 models are included because we are thinking about, we designed a governance systems that we believe will give more ownership to the country to fill out the questionnaires. On the other hand, the monitoring model is still in developing. So I've just said the system has been developed, including a governance systems, and is intended to facilitate the loading of the information by national actors, considering the national statistical offices as the main focal points within each country. So ECLAC will act as the system administrator at the regional level, being able to integrate countries into a system and appoint the administrator at the national level. For their part, the national statistical offices will be as central administrators within the countries who will be able to create groups. For example, a group could be a ministry, and they will be able to assign indicators to that group. Within each group, there will be roles of administrators, supervisors, and writers. So everything will be able to fill in online and decentralized way. When you enter the information entry model, a list of indicators is displayed. And when you select one indicator, you go to the questionnaire, which contains several questions related to the production of the indicators. If the country produces or does not produce the indicator, and the demand and provision of technical assistance, if the indicators is used or not for monitoring at national level, the 2030 agenda, and many characteristics of indicators, which is the statistical operation, the availability range in years, the basic disaggregations, specific disaggregations, periodicity, geographical coverage, and unit of measurement. There are some questions on technical assistance needs and provisions. First, the country needs to answer if they produce or they do not produce the official indicator. If the country calculates the indicator, they are asked if they can provide technical assistance to other countries. In case they do not produce the official indicators, they are asked if they need technical assistance to produce the indicators. But they will also answer if they produce a proxy indicator. And in case they do so, they are also asked if they can provide technical assistance in the production of a proxy indicator. Regarding the information system on activities aiming at improving the measurement, use, and dissemination of the indicators, what we see here is the basic table of the system with all the activities already being uploaded. You can see here, like what we see in the screen is like activities being uploaded by FIO. And the questionnaire includes a lot of things too, the identification of the agency, and if the activity is an interagency activity, what activity type, if it's a workshop, if it's an online technical assistance, a regional workshop, a national workshop, if the activity is in progress, is ended, or is planned, if the activity has suffered any change due to the COVID-19, you have the name and description of the activity, the date, a contact information, and the countries that are being supported. Once you fill that, you ask if the assistance is given to a specific SDG indicator or to a statistical operation. In this sense, one of the improvements that we have been putting in the system is a better linkage between the activities intended to improve the statistical operations and the ones intended to improve a particular indicator. So we don't so we can avoid duplicating the information that we did before. This information system has an online reporting system allocated in the regional SDG gateway. Here, the information can be consulted, aggregated by indicator, country, or agency. Here we see, for example, a country report at the left and an agency report at the right. We are working right now in updating these reports to be able to capture the new fields that has been included in the questionnaire. But the system also allows the consultation of each specific activity, so you can display the fact sheet for each activity. What we see here is the fill-out questionnaire at the left and the results to be published on the web in the fact sheet of the activity. What are the next steps? Next week, we will have the 4th meeting of Statistical Coordination Group, and we will present the progress of the system on national capacities, and we will start a pilot phase with the countries of the group. This system will also be presented to a wider group of countries in the 11th meeting of the Statistical Conference of the America. We still have to define and program the online reports, development of the monitoring model. Regarding the system on capacity building activities, we will promptly release the new reports of the system maybe at the beginning of next year. And our aim is once the online system on national capacity is already launched, to be able to link both systems and so be able to know what countries are demanding and offering regarding statistical cooperation, and what the US system is providing to the countries. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pauline, for your presentation on the activities in the ECLAC region related to statistical capacity building and production of the SDG indicators. We're now at our question and answer session on this item. And I'd like to ask the Secretariat to help me with monitoring the chat and let me know if someone has their hands up. So if I could get a bit of help, I believe that's going to be you, Heather.
Yes, it is. Thank you so much. So we have quite a few things going on in the chat. So what I wanted to first do was direct a question to Craig. He's actually already answered it in the chat, but and also Jurai, in case she also wants to chime in. And it's a question regarding the Global Data Facility, other presented plans for financing and capacity building. So the question is, do the presented mechanisms include any instruments that go beyond the building of statistical capacities of NSOs in the sense of, one, building NSOs capacities to work with alternative monitoring data sources, i.e. Citizen-generated data or human rights data, and two, building the capacities of alternative data providers to produce higher quality data. To tackle the SDGs Leave No One Behind challenge, both in monitoring and policy planning, the use of alternative data sources is essential. So just wanted to allow an opportunity for Jurai and also Craig to respond if they would like, in addition to what they've mentioned in the chat. Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed, and great question, Peter. The short answer is yes. Without repeating what I put in the chat, the vision of the Global Data Facility is to provide support across the development data value chain, and that includes supporting development and use of alternative data sources, both at the kind of foundational fundamentals and at the frontier levels. And so part of that also is meant to go above and beyond building capacity for NSOs, even though that's a big component of what the Global Data Facility was designed to do, as well as supporting other data producing agencies, but also moving to the demand side, as you suggest, in order to be able to build capacity for more and better data use. And that includes for social accountability, improved transparency, improved evidence-based decision-making. And that means moving across the spectrum of potential target beneficiaries and counterparts to receive support through financing or through capacity building and other kinds of institutional strengthening. And so the short answer is yes. If you go to the Global Data Facility website, it's spelled out in a bit more detail. Thanks very much indeed for the question.
Thank you so much. I don't want to, wasn't sure if maybe Jurai also wanted to add anything as well. Not to put you on the spot, but just in case you wanted to provide any additional information. I know the question was specifically on the Global Data Facility, but
sure. Thanks, Heather. I'm just happy to maybe compliment on the clearinghouse side to say, of course, the clearinghouse is not a financing mechanism. I hope that was clear to everyone, but the intention is to put information that can help identify where the needs are. And it is very much focused right now on the needs, country needs. So we're looking specifically at NSOs, and maybe for some other countries, I mentioned we did in-depth studies for several other line ministries in the NSS, but not beyond that right now. So it would be interesting to have a chat to see if that kind of information may be something that would be useful, but we are focusing on very much on the country level and then kind of regional, global out of that. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Next, we have a question for Young-Yi. What are the next steps in SDGs indicators, data upgrade and collection? And actually, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that this was a question that we received in the registration. So I'll pass it to Young-Yi.
Thanks, Heather. So the SDG global database actually is updated quarterly. So every quarter we update the data whenever the custodial agency submit us the data. And for annually, we have a big call near the end of the year to prepare for the next year's SDG global reporting. And so we will actually going to organize a meeting with the custodial agency this month on data and metadata submission, and the next month on storyline submission. And so just check out the database that it's quarterly updated. Back to you, Heather.
Thank you so much. The next question we have was also received during the registration, and the question was, in terms of capacity building activities for SDGs, Have there been any efforts to provide capacity building on awareness and sensitization of persons with disabilities to ensure data on persons with disabilities are collected and measured? And our colleague Elizabeth from the CBM Global Disability Inclusion has provided an answer in the chat that I will just read out to everyone. She notes here that the stakeholder group of persons with disabilities, the International Disability Alliance, and CBM Global Disability Inclusion produced a comprehensive disability data advocacy toolkit for organizations of persons with disabilities. You can find the toolkit in different languages, International Sign, and Easy Read at the link that she provides in the chat. Also, we are piloting disability data trainings with UNFPA for organizations of persons with disabilities in Samoa and Nepal this month, and they hope to share the training and lessons learned in 2022. And I mentioned this yesterday in our and while we were doing the Q&A, that a lot of the things coming in on the chat, we will also make sure that we post this information on the meeting website so that you also have access to the links and information that was provided in the chat, especially for those that might be watching live on the YouTube. So thank you so much, Elizabeth, for that information. We really appreciate it. My next question would be to Pauline. This is from Egypt, and they said they have a question. What is the challenge that you faced in building the online system for monitoring SDGs? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Heather. Well, I would say that maybe one of the challenges is having the commitment of the entities to be part of the system and keep the information uploaded in both of them. Another one is the staff rotation in the agencies and in the country, especially because you train the people to use the systems, and then you have to train them again and start all over again. And there are some basic challenges we face too that has to do with the first system we built it with SDG indicators framework, like the past one, and now we have to arrange all the registers to be able to adapt to the new indicators. That has been, I think, another challenge. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pauline. Appreciate it. I don't actually have any other additional questions, but I did want to just highlight some of the information that came in on the chat from UNDP. They wanted to share that in addition to regional training in Latin America and the Caribbean, OHCHR, UNDP, UNODC, UNESCO, and UNESCAP concluded a regional training in measuring SDG 16 in Asia today. And they had an average of 609 participants per week during 8 weeks. And they also provide a link for more information. And there was another comment, this was related to funding from Brazil, noting that it is crucial to know possible sources of funding to carry out further research needed to produce some SDG indicators. In Brazil, for example, they created a working group with several experts to study the possibility of building the food loss indicator with the existing databases, and came to the conclusion that they will need to carry out a new survey, which could also cover issues related to the sustainable agriculture indicator, and for that they will need financial resources. And then there was also an additional comment regarding capacity building knowledge base and a request to have the material in other languages other than English and with practical hands-on perspective, which this comment was greatly appreciated. I don't think I have any additional comments from the chat or questions, but please let me know if somebody thinks I missed something. So I will hand it back to you, Kara. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Heather. Thanks for all the questions from people. That's very much appreciated. Big thank you to our presenters, both for item 15 and item 14 this morning. We're now at item 16 on the agenda, which is the IAEG-SDG work plan and next steps. And Yonggi Min from UNSD is going to present this. So Yonggi, please go ahead.
Thank you, Kara. So I will present the work plan of the IAEG for the 2022. Next slide, please. And so the activity of the IAEG is going to undertake from now to the March 2022 before the Commission are the following. So the IAEG will focus on prepare the document for the 53rd session of the UN Statistical Commission. And so we will prepare the main document report to the Commission. And we also are working on the 3 background documents to the Commission, which are the report of the working group on measurement of development support, the SDG geospatial roadmap, which we presented these 2 new items on Monday, no, on Tuesday, 2 days ago. And we also are going to include this practical guidelines on small area estimation for SDG, which presented by Howie yesterday. So this is a 3 background document will be made available probably early February. And in the meantime, the IAEG will have its monthly virtual meetings, closed virtual meeting, and will organize an open meeting in the first quarter of 2022. Next slide, please. Yeah. So the IAEG-SDG work program for the next year, from March 2022 to February 2023, are the following. So the first, the IAEG will focus on the implementation of the indicator framework, including integrating geospatial information and the statistics. This is a joint working together with the working group on geospatial information. And the IAEG will share experience and best practice on monitoring the SDGs, including on national SDG platform dashboard and portals, and on communication of SDG for the communication of data for the SDGs, and on data disaggregation and other national efforts in bridging data gaps for SDG indicators. We'll build on knowledge base on this, based on the questionnaire we sent. So we also encourage data innovations and the new data partnerships. And the IAEG also review and making recommendation on capacity building for SDG in coordination with the HLG PCCB. The IAEG will regularly review methodological developments and issues related to the indicators and their metadata, and improve the overall quality of metadata for the SDG indicator through the work program of the metadata subgroup. Next slide. Yeah. The IAEG will continue its work stream on data disaggregation and in order to provide further guidelines, and will work together with other working groups and organization and existing mechanisms for the data disaggregation work. The IAEG will continue the work of the working group on SDMX and geospatial information, and will review the work plan of the working group to ensure that they're in line with the work of the IAEG-SDG. The IAEG will continue have dialogue with the custodian agency to enhance the data flow process for global reporting on the SDGs and on capacity buildings. And the IAEG will hold a quarterly open meeting under the 13th meeting of the IAEG in the fourth quarter of 2022. We also talk about the possibility of a physical meeting of the 13th meeting, and we'll continue to interact through the monthly IAEG closed meeting. Thank you very much. Over to you, Kara.
Excellent. Thank you, Yonggi. The IAEG is going to continue to be very busy over the next year. So we are coming to the end of our meeting now, and our final agenda item is any other business. So I'm going to open the floor to any IAEG members to see for just 1 minute to see if there's any other business they would like to raise. So I will open the floor now. Please raise your hand or write in the chat if there's any comment or question that you'd like to raise. I'm not seeing anything. Heather, if you can let me know if you see any hands up. I do not, but maybe I'm not scrolling fast enough or all the way down.
I do not see any hands, and luckily they will pop up to the top if they are there.
That's fantastic. Okay, so with that, we're going to do the closing now. We made it. On behalf of my co-chair, Karen, and all the IAG members, I would like to thank all of the presenters over the last 3 days, as well as the Secretariat for their support before, during, and during the meeting. And finally, I'd like to thank all of those who attended the 12th IAG meeting for paying close attention and for the great questions that received. Please note the presentations will be, and the recordings for all 3 days will be posted on the meeting's website. And finally, we look forward to seeing you either virtually or in person. We don't know yet, at the 53rd session of the Statistical Commission in March next year. Once again, thank you to all and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.